talk about consciousness industry, use advertising as an example, and use state control as a way by which there are some guilty parties out there trying to milk you for every penny you've got by forms of persuasion and rhetoric on television and on radio. Jerry Mander's marvelous book, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it, Four Arguments for the Elimination of Television. Mander talks about television as the delivery system, where, basically he says that the post-war economy of the United States was threatening to go back to recession because a great deal of industries during the war had been created, but there were no outlets and nobody was buying. So how you do it, you then create a situation where you make needs. How you create needs, you put televisions in the houses of the people and you create a permanent frustration on TV so that people feel the need for buying all the time. That's the kind of theory you run around, and it also works very well with Mander. But on the other hand, you can also see it in a different way, which is that television can be considered as that technology which proliferates, not only because it has definitely clearly evident motivations behind it, but also because it responds to a deeper kind of need within a culture to organize itself. Why is it that TV is so successful across every nation? It's totally transcultural. Why is it that people can spend so much time on it? They obviously need it. They need it in ways that are much more profound than simply finding out what the next item to buy is going to be, or simply finding out the next issue of your newlywed game. There's got to be something in television that responds, that satisfies a trans-conscious need. René Berger, who's an art critic who's written some interesting stuff on television, suggests that TV is like a tribal mask. It's like the old Indian Pakudal or Tsimshian tribal mask, where all the power of the culture appears in the power structure of the culture appears in that single spot. You're watching this thing that comes to you, which represents all the available information and power on your society. It's a totally synchronous environment. Another perception, which has been deemed to be a right-wing kind of thing, was McLuhan's perception of technological determinism. That basically, once the medium was available, eventually it would get to the fore, it would be an extension of a human property, and then it would take over the culture in gradual steps because there was no way of avoiding it. I don't know whether I want to take a position in those two discourses. All I want to say, though, is that socioeconomic factors or causes can be seen to work and regulate a process which is much more profound than the causes seem to indicate. The electronic revolution is not primarily an issue of dollar cents, class struggle, or state control. It's a revolution of consciousness itself. And broadcast TV was one of its major stages. But it is now undergoing some important changes, opening new possibilities for artistic endeavors. Now, what are those changing conditions? Well, one thing one can say is that broadcast TV may have reached maturation, if not its saturation point. Broadcast TV's era probably peaked in the late 60s and early 70s, coinciding not accidentally with the baby boomers. During the late 70s, TV was yielding more and more time, space, human energy, human interest, and generating less excitement than computers. Indeed, microcomputers were coming in the late 70s. Computers really took us by surprise. You know, in the late 60s, science fiction writers, all of them, there's been a review of science fiction writing about the future of technology as it is represented in science fiction, and nobody seemed to have indicated the microcomputer revolution was coming. And yet they knew about the large mainframe stuff, they knew about the various computers which were, I can remember the time when U of T Central Planning Building was filled with a single computer. It was a huge room which was constantly under refrigeration. You remember the girl who was elected to the Senate by Trudeau, who after having helped to destroy the computer at C. George Williams in Montreal. I mean, you remember those days when you had these enormous little rooms, and the science fiction people never thought that you could, at that time, envisage a computer in your kitchen. Okay, so in the late 70s, suddenly, people began to have portable computers. 64-bit machines, nothing very exciting. It will take another 3 or 4 years before you get beyond the Apple II and you go on to the Macintosh, which is a big revolution for the people, but nevertheless, that's what happened. So, computers did something. Computers make a huge difference to television and to video. But as I suggested above, they're essentially the same electronic system. They are part of the same electronic nature. Computers and TV sets both use electromagnetic processing. Computers add to image processing neurotechnological functions of regulation and control. Computerization affects all aspects of TV and video industries. Recording, editing, transmission equipment development. In turn, this affects production, network, content, distribution, and evaluation. As well, and we will get into that, as the psychology of video perception. There is something that has changed in our attitude to television thanks to computer, and I'll try to describe this. The overall effect is to relax the grip of one-way broadcasting over the social consciousness in many different ways. Wow, page 3. Well, thank you. Do I need to talk about the development of technology? Do you want me to say, because I mean all of you are probably a lot aware of that, no? Aren't you all sort of aware of how computers have transformed the technology? Well, I'll just go through a bit of that. What computer chips have done is that they brought precision and flexibility and maneuverability. Like this camera is really thanks to computers. Tiny little chips are regulating and facilitating the operation of the iris, of the running mechanism, of the cutting mechanism. Like for instance, you may know this, but it's a marvelous system for internal editing because you have no slippage. You know, the big problem in inexpensive editing technologies was that you simply could never get a decent cut or a decent accord. With this, it is a computerized system that times and perfectly binds the last image to the next one. So without that, you have a shoddy editing system, you have a shoddy image, and it is not attractive. So that's one of the things it does. Also, it enables you to deal with poor lighting conditions. It reduces the need to do everything in the studio. Better equipment reduces the need to ritually process production through film technology. I heard today at dinner we were talking about turning a video image back to 16 millimeter. It's a marvelous thing that you can do now because the video image is so good that it will look interesting on 16 millimeter. But the other side was the true story in the late 60s and even in the late 70s and early 80s when you were working with a studio, television studio, you found that the people were always going for 16 millimeter and then transferring 16 millimeter onto video because the editing was so poor on video that they would prefer to do it on 16 millimeter. Now you can do your editing without going to 16 millimeter. It means that now television video is getting rid of film, which I think is a great idea. I mean, wonderful. And the faster it happens, and the faster we go from the 2-inch to the 1-inch to the half-inch and now to this video 8 system, which by the way is better than the VHS in terms of the quality of the image, and the sooner we get out of techno-fetishism, the better we'll all be. I mean, the more people will be able to get on the local networks and the cable television. In Italy, it's already happening. In Canada, it is. Your local cable stations don't take your product. In Italy, in many cities, you find video artists have a distribution network. Mind you, nobody watches it, but nevertheless, it's there. It's never been that one day they might be watched, you know. You have to have a way where you have to have an audience, you have to have a distribution thing. So this is something that is part of this revolution of the video technology by computers. Transmission technology, improved automated switching in the counting was the first step to create a jump from the macro television world of broadcast to the meso television world of cable technologies. Cable would be able, thanks to better switching and better computerized accounting system, to make a profit out of distributing with cable rather than letting the broadcaster take it over the airwaves. So there is another development. Another one is transmission technology, which is improving all the time. Do you know now, I don't know about Canada, whether it's happening really in Canada, but in the States, you've got, the country is getting studded now with small, efficient, fully operational towers of transmission